Matthew chapter 15, beginning with verse 21. It says this: Leaving that place, Jesus withdrew to the region of Tyre and Sidon. A Canaanite woman from that vicinity came to him, crying out, "Lord, Son of David, have mercy on me. My daughter is suffering terribly from demon possession." Jesus did not answer a word. So his disciples came to him and urged him, "Send her away, for she keeps crying out after us." He answered, "I was sent only to the lost of Israel." The woman came and knelt before him. "Lord, help me," she said. He replied, "It is not right to take the children's bread and toss it to their dogs." "Yes, Lord," she said, "but even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from the master's table." Then Jesus answered, "Woman, you have great faith. Your request is granted." And her daughter was healed from that very hour. When I was in Wisconsin, one of the speakers that I heard was Terrence Talley. And Terrence talked about the title of his message dealt with, or the topic dealt with, what happens when things go bad. I mean, we're all believers. What happens? You know, it'd be nice if we could have the promise that you come to Jesus and nothing will ever bad will happen in your life ever again. But that's just not true. Difficulties come. And so Terrence was telling a story, and I'm going to share his testimony with you this morning because I think it is powerful truth in it. But Terrence, one of his heroes, one of the people that he just loved to death was Will Smith. You guys know who Will Smith is? A couple of you, right? So do you know what one of the first things that Will Smith did to kind of get him famous? Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Yeah, and do you know the words to the song? You do. Can you sing it for me? No, I'm not. No, okay. So I'll just read. That's like me. I'm not going to sing anything out loud, right? In my head, I'll read you some of the. Yes, yeah, okay. All right. So I don't know how many others, this guy knew these words by heart. I mean, so I'll just read some of the words. It says, "Now this is the story that all about how my life got turned upside down. And I'd like to take a minute, just sit right there. I'll tell you how I became the prince of a town called Bel-Air." And it goes on, and some of you know it. But he was just so fascinated with Will Smith. And he knew every movie Will had ever been in. And well, can you imagine if you were had an opportunity to meet your hero? And this Terrence, he lived in Minneapolis area, and Will was going to release a movie, and I couldn't remember which one it was, but he's releasing a movie, and he decided to do a premiere in Minneapolis. And Terrence found out about it, and he's like, "Okay, here's my chance to meet Will Smith." And he went home, told his wife about it, and she's like, "Okay, well, that's fine." And he went to his work, and he said, "On this Friday of such and such a month," I don't remember, but this Friday, I'm not going to be in work. You're going to notice I'll be missing because I am not going to come because I'm going to go, I'm going to meet Will Smith. And apparently they gave him the time off. He didn't say he got fired. And so anyway, so the night before, it was a Friday, so Thursday night he drives around the theater. He was expecting maybe a line or something. There was no line. And it's pretty late at night, so I thought, okay, I'm going to wait. I'll get up in the morning early, and I'll come over to the theater because I want to be like the first one in line, So he gets there early, and he was surprised. Still no line. And he heard that Will was going to be there at 7. And so, it's still early, but okay, well, maybe no one's there yet. So he parks his car, and he watches the theater, and he sees a security guard go in a door. So he goes in that door. He just follows the security guard, kind of like he knows what he's doing. And he walks in, and just, like he does every day. Like this is normal. And security guard says to him, said, "Sir, what are you doing?" And Terrence says, "Well, I'm here to meet Will Smith." And the security guard told him, "Well, you know that's 7 o'clock tonight." But that doesn't bother Terrence. It's like, okay, I'll be here. So he stays there. He doesn't go anywhere. About 1 o'clock, another person shows up, and they're like, "Where's the line for Will Smith?" "Oh, it starts behind me." So Terrence is the first one in line, and he made sure he was going to be the first one in line. And so he just knew that today was the day he was going to meet Will Smith. And so time goes by, and okay, and now it's 7 o'clock, and still no Will Smith, and now it's 8 o'clock, and still no Will Smith. And all of a sudden, sometime in the 8 o'clock hour, they come in, these security guard come in and say, "Okay, I need a couple of you. Who's in the front of the line?" Well, Terrence was, and said, "Okay, I'll take you." And a couple other people, and they took him out to this place, I don't know, stage or something, and where they were going to meet Will Smith. Well, it was outside, and it was in the winter, and it's Minnesota. It was cold. And Terrence was like, after a few minutes, "I might be frozen by the time Will Smith gets here, but at least I will meet him. I'll be a frozen Terrence, but I will still meet Will Smith." He wasn't going to give up. He was, it was. And so finally Will Smith comes. And he comes right toward Terrence, and they lock eyes. And Terrence, like, he wants to melt. I mean, this is the best day of his life, right? He meets his hero. And now what am I going to say? And he said, these words just fell out of my mouth. "Will, I love you." And Will said, "Yeah, that happens." And then Terrence says, "Will, I want to sit down and have coffee with you." And Will said, "Now that's weird." And that was pretty much the end of their interaction. Shook his hand, but he got to meet his hero. So you can imagine how he went in, saw the movie. After the movie, he went home. He was so excited. He was going to tell his wife. He walks in, and he's, I don't know his wife's name, but anyway, he's calling out to his wife. "Look in this room, she's not there. Look in that room, she's not there." And he finds a note. And the note says, "Just want you to know, I found someone else. Have a good life." I mean, can you imagine? You're at the height of the best day of your life. You meet your hero, and then you go home, and the love of your life is gone. What happens when things go wrong? And I think of this lady. Jesus comes into her region. She's, a Canaanite woman. And she hears about Jesus, and she knows the problems her daughter's been having. She's demon-possessed. But she knows that she's heard, and Jesus, heals people. He casts out demons. I'm going to go meet Jesus. And she's got high hopes. If anybody can set my daughter free, it's Jesus. But did you see the response of Jesus? Kind of the response of Will Smith. This lady says, "Jesus, you're Lord." "Have mercy on me, Son of Lord, Son of David, have mercy on me. My daughter is suffering terribly from demon possession. Could you free her?" And no response. No response. And that doesn't sound like the Jesus we know, does it? But there's just no response. How many of you would be offended? Say, "Wow, I heard about this Jesus. He's surely not all the things I've heard about. He's not what he's cracked up to be. I think I'll just go home." But not this lady. No, she's like, repeats this. "Lord, Son of David, have mercy on me." And she doesn't stop. Finally, it's kind of funny because just coming off teen camp, there's a couple teenagers Then I might have been like the disciples, Lord, would you just deal with them? They're really on my nerves about now. And there's always one or two in the teen camp, that kind of get on your nerves. But, so the disciples go to Jesus and say, hey, could you just tell that woman to go away? I mean, number one, she's not even Jewish. I mean, she's a Canaanite woman, and we don't really associate with them. The word there she uses, and she said dog, she's a dog. The Jewish people looked at Gentiles, and Canaanite would be Gentile. Well, they're just dogs. They're just sinners. We don't really want to reach them. We don't really want to have anything to do with them. And so it was easy for the disciples to say, well, just send her away. She's one of those dogs. And then Jesus said, well, I've come to minister to the people of Israel first. So he almost sounds like he's like taking their side, like he's sympathizing with them, but he still doesn't do anything. He just lets her proclaim who he is. Lord, Son of David, have mercy on me. Isn't it amazing sometimes when a non-believer can be louder and more excited and draw more attention to Jesus than a believer? The disciples weren't like proclaiming that. They weren't running around going, hey guys, this is Jesus. He's the Son of David. He's the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. No, they were just following, listening, and keeping to themselves. But here's this lady who isn't even Jewish, who's telling everyone, proclaiming to everyone who this is. This is Jesus. He's the Son of David. He's the Messiah. Have mercy. And finally, Jesus goes to her and has a conversation. I don't know about you, but I think about before this conversation, her persistence. She persisted and she persisted in her proclamation, and she was loud and boisterous about who this was. This is Jesus. I think sometimes for us, it's easier to give up. He didn't answer me the first time. I guess I won't pray that prayer. He doesn't, we kind of just back away and get quiet instead of pressing in. I think about this woman and the hope that she had. She knew that Jesus and heard about Jesus and the things he had done, and so because of that, she believed it, and she hoped that if she got to meet him, that Jesus would do the same for her daughter. And she had that hope. And even when he kind of resisted, even when he didn't respond maybe the way that she hoped he would, and didn't respond instantly to her request, she didn't let hope die. I think this is interesting. So many times I don't think we know what our identity is. And so because of that, we just kind of like, well, yeah, that's the way we expect to be treated. After all, I'm just a dog, and what do dogs get? Nothing. And be easy just to walk away, give up. But this lady, even though she knew what they were thinking, she knew that they were saying, oh, she's just a Canaanite woman. She's not an Israelite. She's not a Jew. Maybe she doesn't deserve this. Maybe she doesn't have she doesn't please God enough, so, it's easy for her not to receive this. So, yeah, just pass her by. But she's like, no. I'm not going to just let my hope die. I'm not going to let the enemy of our soul, I'm not going to let the demons continue to persist in my daughter and have their way with my daughter. No. My daughter is more precious than that. And her hope, she kept her hope alive, and she didn't give up. And what's interesting here is finally she gets this conversation with the Lord, and she goes up to him, and they have this conversation. And first of all, she says, you are the Lord, the Son of David, have mercy on me. And he says to her, it's not right to take the children's bread and toss it to the dogs. And I think Jesus was really saying here, okay, this is how people think about you. So if I give you what you're asking, it's going to look like I'm just taking these good things and giving it to a Canaanite woman, or in this case, giving it to the dogs. And it's like, how do you feel about that? You know what I mean? Jesus is saying to her, how do you feel about that? And she responds back, and she's like, hey, but even the dogs get the crumbs. Basically saying even the Jewish people feed their dogs something. They give their dogs something. And I'm not coming and asking anything for myself, but I'm asking for my daughter. And so all I want, Lord, is just a couple crumbs for my daughter. And that'll be everything. She didn't give up. She kept pressing in. And sometimes, we go to the Lord and we ask him about something, and he seems like he doesn't hear us. I've prayed for some people for a long time, and they still are struggling with their illness, or they're still not a believer yet. And it was like, sometimes I was like, Lord, don't you hear that? How long do I have to pray? What needs to happen? Because I'm the kind of guy that, I want to get it done. I want to get it done now. You know what I mean? Let's finish this up. And we have to persist, like this lady, persist in prayer. And those promises that God has given to us, even though he hasn't answered our prayer yet, those promises are still there. They're still real. They're still valid. And you got to hold on to those promises. For this lady, she heard, this is the guy that has cast out the demons. He has raised the dead. He has healed these people. And so she heard those things like, whoa, if he does that, then I want that for my daughter. And she didn't give up. And so sometimes the waiting is part of the process. It's part of the test. I was praying about something just the other day, and I don't know how many of you are keeping up in the Red Book, but that day as I was waiting and praying for something, it's like I even kind of said, Lord, how long? And I was kind of hoping for an answer, like right now. I was hoping for something to happen right now. And I went to the devotional book, and it talked about waiting. It's like, it was amazing how that devotional was written for me, and it's written by God talking to you. So it was like God talking to me and saying, just wait. Like, wait. I hate that word. Especially when I want something to happen now, Wait. And there's times that God says, wait. But don't give up your faith. Don't lose your faith. I'm working, God's working. He's ready to do it, but he's testing us to see if we'll hold on to our faith. In the waiting, we don't lose faith. In fact, in the waiting, sometimes the faith can come stronger. And so for this lady, she had to wait. She had to have even a more serious conversation with the Lord. And she had to not remind him. Jesus already knew that he was going to heal this girl. But she had to be reminded that even the dogs get the crumbs. Even dogs receive something. And so God is not going to withhold from anyone. But there are times we have to wait. And so, the response then finally of Jesus is this: woman, you have great faith. What the test was there, the test was given to see if her faith would carry her through. You're going to have opposition in your life. But even in the opposition, your faith has to hold strong. It has to be firm. It has to be there. And when we're tested is when we can show our faith. And he didn't say to the woman, oh, I'm going to give you this because you have a little faith. No, it's you have great faith. And so her request was granted. Sometimes, we say to ourselves, well, God hasn't done it because my faith isn't big enough. I don't think he does it based on your faith if it's big enough. Your faith needs to be there. And sometimes in the resisting and the waiting and the being patient for God, it builds our faith. And because when she walked in, she believed he could do it, but even when he didn't do it right away and kind of acted like he wasn't going to do it, her faith didn't dwindle. It seemed like her faith got greater. And so that's sometimes what God is trying to do in us, in the waiting, is to build our faith, to test it and make it stronger. I don't know about you today. I don't know what's going on in your life, but I just want to encourage you that God is working, God is moving. And when you pray, he hears your prayer. When you bring your requests, he hears them. He doesn't answer all of them right away. Sometimes it comes with a wait. I'm going to share two stories, and I'm sharing these stories again. I don't want you to think of me as being special or wow, you got a great faith. No, I just want you to think about it this way, that each one of us, as we bring things to the Lord, that he will answer and he will do amazing things. So the first story I want to share with you is answered prayer. Remember I told you we were in Wisconsin, and before this concert it began to rain, and it was raining so loud you couldn't hear people talk. Now actually somebody got up and tried to lead us in some songs. It was really interesting because this lady led us in Amazing Grace, and pretty much everyone there knew the words to Amazing Grace. Even though they sang really loud, you could hardly hear anybody singing because the rain was so loud. But it was cool to hear kind of underneath the noise, the music. And she led us in a couple of songs. But in the midst of that, chaos and the thunder and the lightning and all of that, there was a little girl, and we went in earlier, and we got our place against the wall, and there was a fan beside us. And when it started pouring, man, the flood of people came in, and as I was standing there, I said I said out loud, and that's why Noah closed the door on the ark. Because when it was pouring, everybody would come in the ark, right? He wouldn't have room for everyone. We were just crammed in there. But anyway, there was a family that came in, and there was a little girl, and suddenly this mom was like, hey, and she got people to move, and she got this little girl over to the fan, because this little girl, she was probably 7, I would say. She was having a panic attack, and she needed air. She needed to breathe. And for 3 minutes, I kind of watched her, and then I just said to myself, I should pray for her. So I was really right there. I didn't have to go anywhere. And I just said to the little girl, is it okay if I prayed for you? And her mom said, oh yeah, you can pray for her. So we prayed. Simple prayer. Lord, take this little girl's anxiety away. And within a couple minutes, and I had my hand on her shoulder, and I could just tell her breathing had changed. And I said amen, and she looked up at me and just said thank you. And she was calm. There was no more anxiety. It was all gone. It was really cool. And the storm raged on for another 40 minutes, something like that. But anyway, toward the end of the storm, she came up to me and she just said, thank you. She didn't know I was a pastor. She didn't even know my name. She just said, thank you. Prayer really works. And I just thought, oh, wow, what a testimony. And, and I said, oh, it was Jesus. It was Jesus. And he touched her. And she was there playing with her family, interacting with the family without any anxiety, without any worry about the storm. And then another story was I was at teen camp, and it was the last night, and the speaker was talking about this idea during the week, and he gave me his notes. He wrote them on this little bracelet. So he talked about separation, and he always did this. God separates us to himself. And then he fills us so that we can go out and be a blessing. And so the last night he was talking about this idea of blessing, and he's saying it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. It's if you'll be a blessing. God wants us to be a blessing. He wants to empower us so that we can be a blessing. So it's a matter of when. And he was saying that, well, a couple things happened during the time that he was speaking. There was this one lady, the director, walked by me, and I said, hey, I need to say one thing quickly to you. And I stepped outside and I said that one thing. It took about a minute. But in that time, there was a girl that came by us, and where we were standing, it was just down the sidewalk, almost to the end of the church there, was the nurse's office. And this girl came by and she was like, I can't breathe, I can't talk. And we go, oh, the nurse's station is right down there. And so she went down to see the nurse. We went back into the chapel, and that's when the minister said, it's not a matter of if, but when. And as I was standing there, I was like, why didn't I pray for her? Why didn't I just send her off? Why didn't I pray for her? Well, toward the end of the service, another one of the directors came by me, and I needed to tell him something. So again, we stepped out. Oh, I had to catch up to him. And he was like halfway between the chapel and the nurse's station, and I caught up with him, and I said, hey, I needed to tell you this. And I told him I was going to tell him this, but then I forgot what I was going to say. You ever have that happen? But now it was fresh in my mind. So I went out, boom. And as I was giving him this brief little message, this girl goes by again toward the nurse's station. And I had just finished telling the director what I needed to say, and I say, hey, come here. I said, can I pray for you? And she shakes her head, and there was a bench right there. So we sat on the bench, and I said, can I ask you your name? She couldn't tell me. She couldn't speak. And there was another person that kind of followed her, and she waved at this person and did some sign language, and the person said, oh, her name is Portland. And so I said, okay, Portland, I want to pray for you. So I prayed for her voice, and I prayed for her lungs. After the prayer, I said, so Portland, how is things now? And she could speak, but it was raspy. And she said, oh, I can actually kind of speak. But then she took a big breath, and she goes, oh, but my lungs are on fire. I said, well, we're not done yet. So we prayed again. Second time. Got done praying. Said, okay, how are things now? And her voice was so much better. It wasn't perfect yet, but it was so much better. She took a big breath, and she let it out, and she goes, my lungs, they're so much better. It still burns a little bit on the bottom, but she was ready to take off like, oh, this is good enough for me. I said, well, no. I said, we're going for complete healing here. I said, so let's pray again. So we prayed again. And after that, she took a breath. And she was just so excited. And with a perfect voice, she said, my lungs, they're like brand new. And my voice, it's perfect. And she took off. And I just said, remember, that's Jesus. It's the power of Jesus. She took off running. I saw her the next day because we were leaving camp the next day, and she was there, and she was saying goodbye to her friends, and she was crying. And I said, well, how's your voice? She goes, oh, Pastor, she said, it's a lot better, but I lost it because I talked too much. But God is good. And I share those stories because God still answers prayer. And like this lady, we don't want to give up. We don't want to just do half a job. Oh, you're better, great. No, we want to pray for complete. And if you've been praying for a while for something, it's like, oh God, I feel like the Canaanite woman. Just remember, the answer is coming. The promise is there. And he will answer your prayer. sometimes there's a wait. Trust me, there are requests that I've been praying for that I keep waiting for. They haven't been answered yet. But I've been reminded to keep on. To keep on. Sometimes things are going along really good, like Terrence, and then boom, out of nowhere you get hit. Bad things, they could happen to us. But that's why we have faith. And that's why we walk with the Lord. So he can help us through those difficulties. He can help us through those times. We just got to keep the faith and keep praying and seeking the answer.